Over here we have 4 glue-in eye bolts. They're twisted rod eye bolts, so it's 8mm rod, which makes a 16mm round with 18mm holes at 150mm deep with Hilti RE500 V3 glue set in there. We use a little bit of the leftover powder to cover up the ugly pink glue, try to make it not as conspicuous as we could. We've got the 4.8mm rope coming up into a master point that's right now it's covered up, but it's easy to inspect. I won't bother with that now. That 80mm rope is just threaded directly through the eye bolts and it comes up to a master point. From there, it connects to these Dyneema whoopee slings, which are phenomenal for adjusting the position of the hang frame. The hang frame has its feet set about 30 centimeters into the ground, and is this one I believe was not shortened. I think this one is the full 3 meters in height. There's Johan for reference. How tall are you, Johan? 172. So from the hang frame you can see the 6mm cord, Bcharre 6mm. I can't remember what the rating on it was, but it was their highest rated. It's my memory, my recollection. So the Dyneema rope comes up to the hang point shackles. You can see if there was a failure of any point of the hang frame or these here, you're still going to have the direct connection of the Highline to the anchor materials. Of course, we've got double everything. We also have the tails tied back on that, and you can see some knots here for preventing slippage. This is Pink Tube with Marathon Play backup. Nina's getting some going here. You can see that the riggers set the hang frame a little bit. Sorry. You can see that the riggers have set the hang frame just a little bit too far to the right, so the feet were planted in the ground just a little bit too much that way, and the hang frame, the hang material, hang sling, has equalized itself a bit. And you can see on the left side here it's a bit shorter than the right side. When it was originally set, it was actually set pretty equally, but there's the way the cord comes through the hang frame, comes out of the hole at the top. The hole goes all the way through, and it goes through straight into there. And you can see as the cord comes out, it goes cross grain, so that we're not putting any loading along the grain. It's actually coming out. And yes, there is a little bit of force pushing, but it's actually quite light amount of force that we're actually pulling and doing somewhat of a splitting effect. It's quite minimal. The calculation for that shows it's really very little force. And we do have this cord here. Now this point here has some inward force, and you can see on a large whip there is a bit of flex in the hang frame, pulling the leg inward a bit, and so we have the lever length of that point to the pivot point up there, the fulcrum, and that lever is how much it's able to apply the force of whatever that is. It's so it's pulling that inwards, and you can see that that's quite a large lever there, but the force that this is applying is actually quite minimal. Even in the hardest of forces, this is still not that much. And this one moves pretty easily on here. It's still quite nominal, the amount of force there. You can see a little bit of flex there with her pushing on that, and of course a whip has more. You can also see a little bit of forward movement. If I was standing off here, you can see a little bit of forward movement with that, but it's quite nominal, and that would be from the anchor materials stretching slightly. We did have a little bit of an issue with the feet. Were sunk down by about 30 centimeters on one of the other hang frames. The feet sunk down into the ground even more, so that ended up, because the feet were sinking, it caused the hang frame to tip forward a little bit more than we would have preferred. And this hang frame is an example of tipping forward just a little bit. It's not terrible, but it's also not desirable. It's going to start multiplying the force if it's tipping forward. So the preference would be that the hang frame actually points back a little bit. About as much as that is pointing forward, it'd be nice if that was pointing backwards that much. But again, this amount is not that terrible. It's still a very stable system. The reason why we didn't cut the feet shorter on this one, we could have made that hang point, we could have just had a shorter hang frame, and that's the convenient thing about using the A-frames like this. Just chop off the foot. The reason why is because it was not completely necessary. The forces on this are quite small, and we'd rather keep the options open. Making these hang frames takes some work, and it's fine enough how it is, I think. I think that's about it for the hang frame for the dead goat line. It's called the dead goat because literally right where I'm standing there was a big fat dead bloated goat here that fell from somewhere up there, and I wanted to keep it, but nobody else wanted it. Oh well.